I don't care how much you enjoy a good scare. These places are just not worth it. You would literally never catch me in any of these places. But if you must go, please just promise me you will never go alone. Starting off our list today, we have the infamous McKamey Manor. This place is insane and definitely somewhere you should never go, let alone alone. The guy who runs it, Russ McKamey, is all kinds of messed up too. McKamey Manor is a haunted house that opened up in San Diego in 2001. Well, I don't really know if haunted house is the right word because honestly, it's really more along the lines of a physical and psychological torture experience. The only way to visit is to join a Facebook group and then directly message the owner, Russ, who claims to have a waiting list for the attraction with thousands of names on it. The cost of entry? A donation of a bag of dog food, which honestly just makes this thing way more freaking creepy because it lets you know Russ isn't doing it for the money, but instead he actually gets off on the horror his patrons experience. In order to take part in the experience, you are required to sign a 40-page waiver and undergo a mental evaluation designed to determine your biggest fears. The experience takes place in Russ's personal home and can last up to 8 hours. And it can include waterboarding, physical violence, and force feeding. Many participants actually claim to have left with broken bones, cuts, and bruises. And apparently, Russ has forced illicit and hallucinogenic substances on his guests in order to make the experience all the more terrifying. Not only that, but some even claim to have undergone tooth extraction during their time in the manor. That is so gross, and obviously, many participants report having experienced extreme, severe, lasting trauma and PTSD after going to this place, which has since been relocated to Texas as of 2017. Do not go here. That's all I have to say. Alright, moving on from the hell that is McKamey Manor to the gateway to hell, Stull Cemetery, located in Stull Village in Kansas. In the 1850s, a church was built on the grounds, and although the creators of it claim to have been Catholic, carved into the building's brick was the word witch, which is kind of contradictory. It is said that shortly after the church went up, a local woman participating in witchcraft and worshipping the devil conceived a son with none other than Satan himself. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess, depends on how you look at it, their anti-miracle didn't last long, and the half-man, half-demon conception was buried under a tree in the church's cemetery, the same tree its mother used to take her own life shortly after the loss. It is believed that twice a year during the spring and winter equinox, Satan walks the ground to visit. And apparently it's not a far commute either, as the church is said to be a direct route to Down Under. No, not Australia, I'm talking about hell. Two very different places, unless you hate spiders, I suppose. For many years, satanic cults would gather in the church, often mutilating animals in the name of devil worship, until eventually the church burned down after a spontaneous fire broke out from the inside. Coincidence? I don't know. What's really strange though is that the wooden cross inside of the church was untouched by the flames. The place is so haunted with such an incredibly unholy past that during a trip to Colorado, the Pope actually instructed his pilot to fly around the entire state of Kansas rather than over it because he refused to fly over such unholy ground. There have also been many people who have died on the grounds over the years, and of course, as it is a cemetery, even more are buried there. And although the church was torn down by residents of the town in an effort to end the satanic worship and paranormal activity, the grounds to this day remain super haunted and incredibly disturbing. Next up, we have the Mansfield Reformatory, located in Mansfield, Ohio. If it looks familiar, that's probably because Shawshank Redemption was filmed on the grounds in 1994. But before it became a famous movie set, the Mansfield Reformatory was a penitentiary, and a pretty bad one too. The inmates were often kept in incredibly inhumane conditions, the jail was overcrowded, and the cells were small. Prisoners were cramped, overworked, and underfed. While this is already a major violation of human rights law, it actually gets worse. The medical care in the prison wasn't great. In fact, it was sadistic, and it wasn't actually medical care either. Prisoners who acted up would often be sent to doctors who had been given the green light to use experimental techniques on the inmates so that they would better comply with the guidelines of the corrupt prison. Some wardens even allowed these so-called doctors to torture the prisoners as well. So yeah, definitely not medical care, but that was the guise used by the reformatory. While the prison was operational, over 200 people died within its walls, and the building is now said to obviously be extremely haunted by those who suffered during the years between 1896 and 1990, when it finally closed its doors. This next one is for my Canadian friends, so sit back, grab yourself a Molson, and get ready to learn about Fairmont, Banff Springs, located in Alberta. I mean, you might already be familiar with this hotel, but are you familiar with its dark and twisted history? Or the killings that have taken place within its walls? Or the fact that one room in the hotel, room 873, is so badly haunted that it had to be permanently closed off to the public. Like, sealed off. They didn't just put a deadbolt on the door, they paved over it. But even still, many guests have reported seeing the impression of a young woman appear on the wall where the door of room 837 used to be. The room is said to be haunted by the ghosts of a woman and her daughter who were killed in the suite many years ago. It is said that those who stay in the room next to 873 often hear loud banging coming from inside, along with other strange occurrences. In other areas of the hotel, guests have reported seeing a headless man and the ghost of a deceased bride who died in the hotel in 1920 after falling down a flight of stairs. Alberta, Canada to Athens, Ohio, another place you most definitely do not want to visit alone, would have to be the Ridges, known at one point as the Athens Lunatic Asylum. It's not the best name, I know, but that is what they called it. The asylum opened in 1874 and was home to hundreds of patients for many years until its closure in 1993. During its years of operation, the hospital, if you can call it that, was home to hundreds of patients, as I said, whose diagnoses range from jealousy and menstrual derangement all the way to dissociative identity disorder. The care at the facility was terrible, and not really care at all. As many of us are well aware, mental health was incredibly misunderstood in the 20th century, and while advancements have been made, it's still pretty misunderstood to this day still. Anyways, patients at the asylum were often mentally and physically neglected and mistreated. And speaking of treatment, patients often underwent hydrotherapy, electroshock therapy, and many were even lobotomized, which would result in either death or extreme brain damage. One of the most famous deaths that took place on the ground was that of a 54-year-old female patient who had gone missing for 6 weeks, only to be found in an unused room of the asylum. When she was found, it became clear that she had taken off all of her clothes, folded them neatly, and then laid down on the floor to die. Her body left a stain that is still visible after all of these years. And it's been said that that woman, along with many of the other patients who died on the grounds, continue to heavily haunt the area to this day. Next up, we have the Byberry Asylum located in Philadelphia. Much like the Athens Asylum I just mentioned, this place was absolutely atrocious. After the doors opened in 1907, it quickly became overcrowded, with over 7,000 patients being confined to the property for a variety of severely misunderstood mental ailments. On the flip side, there were also some legit criminally insane patients too. So I guess you could say this place had range. But regardless of ailment or of the offense, all of the asylum patients were treated equally horribly. The hallways where many of the patients slept due to overcrowding were often lined with human feces and bodily fluids, and the staff were known to routinely mistreat those under their care. After the asylum shut down, the building became a hotspot for vandals, arsonists, and satanic cult gatherings. It was torn down in 2006, but the grounds to this day remain eerie, dark, dangerous, and most certainly somewhere you should not go alone. Next up, we have Shades of Death Road in New Jersey. The name comes from a combination of deaths caused by killer highwaymen and the deaths of the killer highwaymen after the townspeople in the area had finally had enough of their torment. Bludgeonings, decapitation, and projectile-related deaths are among those recorded in the area. Along with this, during the 1880s, the swamps surrounding the roadway were home to many malaria-riddled mosquitoes that caused many more deaths to occur in the area as well. Along with all of this, during the 1990s, a number of Polaroids were found scattered in the woods just off the road. Many depicted women laying on metal slabs. They appeared to be conscious but had no expression on their faces. To visit the area today would lead you to be met with a thick fog and the ghosts of the highwaymen. You might also experience bright lights attempting to run you off the road as you approach the scene of so many crimes, which is why it's on this list, and again, you should not go. Next, we have Zvikov Castle, located in the Czech Republic. At one time, an evil and malicious spirit is said to have roamed the halls of the castle, but apparently it disappeared in 1597. Despite this, hauntings and other paranormal events continue to take place on the grounds. Animals would often be seen displaying erratic behavior, and a woman whose life was ended at the hands of her own husband on the grounds could be seen mournfully roaming the halls with gaping holes where her eyes and nose used to be. I'm so sorry, that's really gross. The embalmed body of another young woman can also be found within the walls of the castle, so incredibly well preserved that many who visit claim that she still blinks her eyes. It has also been said that anyone who dares to sleep in the main tower of the castle will die within 12 months of doing so, so again, do not go, do not test this theory, I'm begging you guys, this is the disclaimer, this is the warning. Starting off our top 2 today, we have the Waitomo Caves Hotel, located in New Zealand. Those who have stayed at the hotel, built in 1908, have reported seeing BLOOD, sorry, you guys know I can't say it, dripping from the bathtubs, and have felt apparitions passing right through their bodies. Although the hotel shut down in early 2009, a group of ghost enthusiasts managed to talk their way into spending just one night in the hotel sometime later in that year, during which time they heard vicious screams and whimpering coming from a vent leading to an empty room where someone had been quite gruesomely killed many years ago. The group reported having been terrified and unable to sleep the entire night. I do not blame them. I hope I can sleep tonight. And finally, we have the Stanley Hotel, the inspiration behind The Shining, written by Stanley King. It has often been referred to as the most haunted hotel. However, I think that's pretty debatable considering that the Cecil exists, but that's a whole nother video. Anyways, while staying at the Stanley, King had a dream in which his son was being chased through the hallways by an endless string of horrors, which makes sense considering King and his family, who were the only ones staying at the hotel at the time, were staying in the most haunted room in the building, room 217. The room was haunted by a chambermaid, Elizabeth Wilson, who had been nearly killed in an explosion in the room so many years ago. When she did die in 1935, it appears as though her spirit went back to the room, and it has been widely accepted that she's haunted it and the hotel ever since. Alright you guys, don't say I didn't warn you. These places are not only terrifying, but in some cases they're extremely dangerous. So yeah, come on. I've been your host, Hannah Thompson, and of course I will see you in our next video.